What secrets lie hidden within the vastness of our northern wilderness? Are there any unknown creatures roaming the forests and tundra? If there are, how have they managed to avoid our detection for so long? In Manitoba, and really in most of Canada, we crowd along our southern border almost as if we're afraid of our endless north country, or of something dwelling in it. And it is daunting, mile after mile of forest or tundra, in which, it seems, anything might live. There's no end of stories about mysterious creatures sighted in northern Canada, but so far that's all they've been, stories. Evidence has been a little lacking, at least until the day a 30-year-old ferry operator in Norway House, Manitoba, turned on his video camera at just the right moment. This is the story of the man whose bizarre experiences led to this potential proof, and of the strange paths life can take for a man and a town after an encounter with the greatest cryptozoological mystery of all time, Bigfoot.
My name is Bobby Clarke, and I'm a cable ferry operator located here in Manitoba, about 36 kilometers from Norway House. What I do at Sea Falls Cable Ferry is I take traffic across the Nelson River Channel by cable ferry. On the morning of April 16, 2005, the air outside was humid, I guess you can say. Kind of a calm, clammy feeling. I got to work that morning. I drove somebody across. Somebody pulled up, wanted to get across the river. I went across. I came back. I went straight up to the outhouse. And I come out and I just had this eerie, strange feeling, like somebody was looking at you. So I proceeded to walk down, walking away from the outhouse, and I was looking around. And I looked across the river and I just seen this little figure. So I ran for my camera and I came back here and I leaned up against the outhouse. I tried to keep it steady, but yeah, no can do. So I was wondering who this person was. So I tried zooming on it. The trees were in the way. It kind of surprised me, I guess, because I started thinking in my mind, yeah, this is pretty big. In between the two big tallest trees there, the pine trees, I'd say almost in between there.
And this is what Bobby Clarke saw through his camera lens, 10 seconds out of the 40 or so that he shot.
And then, boom, it hit me, whatever it is. And then the movement of the arms and everything started getting to me. So I started getting nervous, shaking. And then when it stopped to turn to look at me, that's when I froze and I turned my camera off. And what did I just capture on film?
What had Bobby just captured on tape? Was the figure in his video a genuine Bigfoot creature? Whatever the case, on the morning of April 16th, 2005, Bobby Clarke wrote a new chapter in the legend of the Sasquatch. But Bobby's chapter was just the newest in a huge volume of stories, a library of encounters with which I was more than familiar. My name is Calum Vatnsdal, and I'm a filmmaker from Winnipeg. I've had an abiding interest in the Bigfoot legend for as long as I can remember. Bigfoot fever peaked in the early 70s after the release of 16 seconds of footage shot by Roger Patterson in Northern California. It's probably the most famous home movie in the world after the Kennedy assassination footage, and the debate over its authenticity rages to this day. Like so many others, I was captivated by that strange image. It somehow didn't really matter if it was fake or not. I read every book on the subject and went to see every B-movie Bigfoot docudrama I could find. I schooled myself as best I could, and when I found out that Manitoba was apparently a hotbed of Bigfoot activity, I was the happiest fellow in the world. As fascinated as I was, though, I still wasn't convinced that there even was such a thing as Bigfoot. But when I heard about Bobby's footage, I thought, wow, this might do it for me. This could be a new Patterson clip, practically in my own backyard. But if I was going to find out anything more, I would have to head north myself, to Norway House, near the ferry crossing where Bobby Clarke had videotaped the Bigfoot. It sits 30 kilometers north of huge Lake Winnipeg and nearly 600 kilometers north of Winnipeg itself. Driving there means traveling for a good part of the way down a treacherous dirt road. But I'd heard it was one of the most modern and progressive northern communities you could hope to find. Norway House is a sprawling community, at once a town and an Indian reserve, with a jagged, almost random line separating the two. Right away, I began meeting people with Bigfoot stories of their own. Turns out the creature had been visiting the area long before one showed up on Bobby Clarke's video camera.
And so you guys want to know about Bigfoot? Okay, I'll give you a little of my knowledge about Bigfoot. So it happened in 1982, June the 15th. My dog got scared. So it crawled on its belly there, and I was wondering what was wrong with the dog, and his hair was standing straight up. So then I went in the bush next morning and I saw these big tracks, This is a perfect track. And you could see the vessels like the veins, okay?
We're out lifting nets, commercial fishing. We've seen this figure on the beach. So there's somebody walking on the beach. This person turned around, looked at us. That's when we seen he wasn't human. He was a Sasquatch. On movies, TV, short beard, everything. Well, he doesn't have a short beard. Where's he gonna get a scissors from to cut his beard?
In Cree culture, Sasquatch is sometimes thought of as a spirit, which can manifest itself as a physical being, allowing it to leave behind evidence of its appearance. That evidence could be anything, from footprints and broken twigs to images on a video camera. It's as real to some as any animal in the forest. But, I was told, the spirit only appears in the presence of certain individuals. And it seemed as though Bobby must be one of them because he'd seen the Sasquatch before.
Well, it's not the first time I've seen something like that up close. Really up close. I must have been about 16 and a half, 17. I was driving down the road there and I seen something like that, upright, moving its way into the bush. I was frightened then, and I'm frightened again. I just don't know why. Why do I have to see it again?
David Finch is an anthropologist at the University of Winnipeg, who, like me, is fascinated by the possibility of unknown beasts roaming the woods.
So you have certain things that kind of favor the hypothesis that there might be something out there, not the least of which is you have thousands of sightings. The downside of that, or the flip side of it, is that a lot of these sightings are done in conditions of poor visibility, where there's not a very good way of assessing the validity of those sightings.
I realized that I needed to speak with an experienced Bigfoot investigator, someone who'd heard about Bobby's video and gone up to do their own investigation right after the sighting. I found that person in the small town of Fisher Branch. Michelle Burrill has been studying the Bigfoot phenomenon with a feverish devotion for 25 years.
I definitely believed the story right away. I had no reason not to believe in it. So I went down and I actually, as a matter of fact, when I went there, Bobby was on his way to Winnipeg, so we kind of missed each other. But I talked to the people out there and I went and looked at the location, and I had no reason not to believe that this actually didn't happen.
I too had no reason not to believe this actually didn't happen, and people felt the same way all through Norway House. When I got there, Bobby's footage was the talk of the town. Everyone knew all about it, or had even seen the footage itself.
This is a small town, gossip travels faster.
There's a lot of people parked outside there, outside this place, like 20 cars, and there's a whole bunch of people wanting to see the video.
What did I just see? You know, that's the first thing that came to my mind when me and my wife went in. The videotape is did we just see here? And I walked out of the house, they asked me, okay, counselor, what do you think? I said, we're not alone. You know, there's something out there.
From what I'd been hearing, Bobby's tape was something special. A piece of footage to rival some of the most famous bits of Bigfoot evidence in the world. The founder of the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization, Matthew Moneymaker, one of the world's authorities on Bigfoot sightings, sure seemed to think it might potentially be important.
Usually these things are in fairly thick brush. They're in thick trees. It's a fairly rare circumstance, like what happened in Manitoba, that one would be at a place where it could be observed from a distance, thereby making it safe for the guy to pull out his camera and the thing didn't have the impetus or need to run away immediately. That doesn't happen very often. Those are rare situations. It happened in Bluff Creek, it happened in Manitoba, but usually when people have confrontations, it's so thick that if you see one, it's so close to you, you're not thinking about, oh, I should get my camera. You're not thinking about that. You're thinking about, am I gonna die?
People get information and form opinions very quickly nowadays, so if Bobby's footage was going to pass muster with the public, it was going to have to be pretty good. And no one, least of all Bobby, had any idea of what was to come of his video as it emerged into the world.
Bet you won't forget that. Norway House in the house. We got it, you want it. Norway House in the house. We gotta prove it, we'll do it. Norway House in the house. The competition gets cream. Norway House in the house. Cause we're the dream team.
The next day there was already CBC News. They were already there at the ferry taking footage. And then the next day we had Manitoba Hydro. They landed a helicopter there and they had 5 guys come out. They all had cameras and they jumped in the helicopter and up they went. You know.
I do the morning show from 7 a.m. to 12 noon. When I got there, the phone started ringing. There was a reporter that called from Washington.
We had several calls. There were several calls at that time from media outlets all over the country, basically.
We had calls from different radio stations throughout Canada, and actually I was getting calls at home from Florida.
Phone started ringing like crazy. I told Bobby to phone me. I said, there's people calling here, something about a Sasquatch.
Phone was ringing. I'd hang it up, the phone would ring again. I'd step one step away from the phone, it'd ring again.
Bob is not like to be in a spotlight, the people around him too much. He's a very private individual.
They were trying to kind of steer clear of all the people that were calling because it was just a media circus for them.
So far, it was just small potatoes. Local media looking for a good story. But these things snowball quickly nowadays, and a regional report will make its way out into the world before you know it. Soon, a lot more attention would be turned on the little community of Norway House. Only days after the Norway House Sasquatch sighting, news reports of the event had made their way out of Manitoba. Bobby Clarke's video recording of the legendary beast had everyone in town abuzz. But how was the rest of the world going to react to the news? By bringing money to the table, some hoped.
As a community, we have an opportunity here. It's a once in a lifetime that we hear about. This is the legend of the Bigfoot or the Sasquatch. Footprints here and there being seen. But to have a video of something, whether it's a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch or whatever you want to call it, it is something that is very huge.
Since the early days of Sasquatch videos, they've been considered a surefire goldmine, particularly by the people who shot them. I'd always assumed that too, but it turns out this isn't the case, even with the most famous of them, the Patterson footage. Matthew Moneymaker told me the story.
Look at the precedents. If you want to know what's going to happen, look at what's happened before. Roger Patterson did make some money off it for a little while. They did these kind of private showings in theaters. He was eventually ripped off by some people that he was working with who went out, in other words, they went out and they started doing these showings and getting money for it and didn't give him any.
So if Patterson had never amassed anything close to a fortune from his video, how could Bobby Clarke? The best way for him to profit from the experience, he realized, would be to sell the footage to the highest bidder. But that would be a complicated business deal, and Bobby knew he'd need some help.
Bobby is married to a niece of mine. So that's how I got involved.
I don't know, I just wanted somebody to look after it, I suppose, look after, so I won't get jerked around or anything like that.
And so, Bobby Clarke enlisted the help of Councillor Langford Saunders and the Norway House Band Council to act as business representatives for his Bigfoot recording.
So he made an agreement. He was happy with the agreement.
Pretty well the band's looking after everything. We're going with the band lawyers, and the band Langford's looking after it for us, me, my wife, and my family.
He wants to look after his own family for long term, but at the same time he was thinking about the community itself.
It's a partnership with the band.
But the Cree Nation is the majority stakeholder on the tape.
But despite all the negotiating, Bobby claims he never actually signed anything.
I haven't signed any papers, no. I haven't signed any papers with anyone. That's what everybody wants, of course.
But, as Bobby's agreement with the band was being hashed out, a mysterious stranger was approaching Norway House. His appearance would turn the town, and indeed Bobby Clarke's life, nearly upside down.
I work at the diner on weekends, and there was a guy there, a reporter that was hanging around there for a whole week, and then he kept bothering us, do you know anything, do you know Bobby, can you take us where he lives?
The stranger's name was Brett Hudson, and he was a television producer from LA. He invited Bobby Clarke and Langford Saunders to his hotel room, where he was ready to negotiate for the right to use Bobby's Bigfoot footage.
Well, he said, well, I'm not going to videotape anything. All I want to do is view the tape, and I have to talk to my boss.
And then showed him the footage.
View the tape, viewed it again.
And then that was it?
So we left the airport and drove down to my house, which is about 10 minutes from the hotel, 10, 15 minutes. Got a call that they're willing to make an offer. They wanted to use it, exclusive rights to it for a week. Promote it and then use it at one time. About 4 days after that, I got a call that I need to go to LA.
So Langford Saunders made his way south to represent Bobby and all of Norway House, and to finally see the precious video on state-of-the-art Hollywood equipment.
They're going to enhance the video, to work on it. My questions, like if it was a man, a human, or a moose or a bear, were answered at that time because I viewed the tape several times. I phoned Bob at that time and said we had something. There's something here. The news was to him was mixed. He was hoping it was a man, a hunter walking on the beach. That was his hope.
That it wasn't a moose or a bear was evidently good enough for Hudson to claim it could well be a Bigfoot. As he drew up his plans down in California, Norway House went about its business and waited to see what would happen next. The Norway House Bigfoot video had traveled from northern Manitoba to the entertainment epicenter of the world, Los Angeles, courtesy of TV producer Brett Hudson. Hudson was producing the segment for a popular news magazine program that had been airing since the mid-1980s.
When Current Affair announced that they were going to put a team to track down Bigfoot, and from there it just got wild. It was really wild.
Today, we'd like to announce our official search for Bigfoot. Our special team is already heading into the woods of Manitoba in search of Sasquatch.
Hudson's team of Bigfoot experts was carefully selected from the greater Los Angeles area. The first recruit for the mission was famed anomalist Dr. Franklin Rule. I didn't know what an anomalist was either, but it turns out that Dr. Rule is an expert in the strange and bizarre. Perfect for a Bigfoot hunt.
I am a PhD in theoretical nuclear physics, but I found that the scientific community I felt was too narrow-minded about controversial subjects such as involving ufology, parapsychology, and cryptozoology, which of course would include the study of Bigfoot.
He certainly seemed to have the right credentials for the job, as well as the right hat. Next up was ex-rock star and actress Sheree Curry, who'd found fame with Joan Jett in The Runaways and had co-starred with Jodie Foster in Foxes and Demi Moore in Parasite. Since then, she'd taken up the art of chainsaw sculpture, which made her perfect for Hudson's team, a fey ray who could fight back if a big ape should attack.
I guess someone had this brilliant idea to call me and say, do you want to do something crazy? And of course, you only live once. So they told me about Bigfoot and how it had been spotted in Manitoba, Canada, and if I wanted to be part of their expedition team. I loved the idea. And gosh, within 24 hours, I was on a plane.
Brett Hudson was one of the Hudson Brothers, a musical comedy team from the 70s. Now he was a freelance producer with an interest in Bigfoot, among other diverse subjects. I would soon discover that Brett Hudson is as difficult to track down as Bigfoot himself.
Now, when we were flying up from Winnipeg to Norway House, I was very much impressed with the forestation on the left, the right, the north, the east, the south, the west. We found tremendous foresting. You could have had 100 Bigfoot creatures concealed in those trees very easily.
We found such strong evidence that it went from a campy, goofy thing with a girl with a chainsaw and Dr. Rule and, you know, Brett Hudson to, oh my gosh, this thing is real.
Current Affair came into town, you know, with offer, I don't know the exact amount of dollars they had offered. But sadly, they were the only ones that ventured into the community to make an offer.
No one in town could, or would, tell me how much a Current Affair had paid for the Bigfoot footage, though there were rumors that Bobby alone had cleared upwards of $400 million. No big surprise that there was a wave of Sasquatch sightings in Norway House after that. The Chubb family, for instance, found a museum's worth of Bigfoot evidence right outside their back door.
Okay, look at that stick up there, it's cracked. I don't know when that happened, man. Early in the morning, I went walking this way, 8 o'clock. I was looking for bone arrow sticks here. Seen these things steaming up. Seen it steaming. They were fresh. That's where I found the hair. And they use these things in the bushes.
A little girl had a terrifying encounter of her own that summer, and I wondered if she was thinking about making a fortune from her story too. Didn't seem like it to me.
Heard something hitting something, so I went to go see it, and there was something big and hairy. And I screamed, and that thing started to run. And then I ran inside, and before I said anything, I just fainted.
There was so much Bigfoot activity that the local RCMP got a call, much to their delight.
How many people get to investigate or have to deal with a Bigfoot sighting, and it was certainly unique and the first time for me. I've dealt with cattle and bear and cats and dogs and all kinds of stuff, but never had to deal with a Bigfoot.
The constable never really got to finish his investigation, as real-life concerns drew his attention away from Bigfoot. There were other investigations too. A professor from the University of Manitoba came to have a look at the footprints. Nothing conclusive came out of that either. In the meantime, a Current Affair had all the Bigfoot stories they needed, and they left Norway House never to return. So Bobby and the other citizens of Norway House popped their popcorn and waited anxiously to watch their worldwide network television debut. It would be an experience they would not soon forget.
He's big, he's hairy, and he's here. Bigfoot.
We do have some breaking news for you from the woods of Manitoba in Canada.
The Norway House Bigfoot saga was a big story for a Current Affair, and they ran it for a week straight. Their coverage of Bobby's Bigfoot experience was energetic and colorful.
Do you hear me, Dr. Rule?
Yes. Yes, I do, Tim, and may the power of the cosmos be with you.
Oh.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. We're here in the heart of Bigfoot country at Norway House, northern Manitoba. Tim, there could be 100 Bigfoot creatures hiding in those trees, no doubt about it.
Any sign of any one of them?
Not yet, but I've had tremendous response from the locals. One man has promised to show us a patch of Bigfoot hair he found just a week ago.
That's how a Current Affair told the story of the Norway House Sasquatch sighting. Lively, dramatic, and entertaining. and it would be the most thorough examination the world would ever see.
It was more of a show, and we didn't like that.
I think the virtue of respect was completely left out, completely denied. We were denied of that, what makes us as a people.
People were upset that it was portrayed that way.
They asked if I could do an interview. I spoke about the spirituality, belief system behind all this, the stories of our people, the Cree people, about the Bigfoot, Sasquatch, the Witigo, and the spirits. Those are our protectors.
But they seemed unable to protect Norway House and its people against the seductive powers of television. Bobby Clarke and the others had earnestly told their stories, but now they almost wished they hadn't. I never did find out how much money they got from A Current Affair, but I don't think it was very much, and it was looking like maybe that was all they were going to get. After the Current Affair and all the fallout in Norway House, I went to LA just to ask Brett Hudson why he'd told Bobby's story the way he had, and how he felt about being the man who'd brought this potentially historic footage from the wilds of Manitoba to, well, Santa Monica. I had it on good authority that Hudson lived in Malibu and was in fact known as the King of Malibu. We'd scheduled an interview, but by the time I got down to Los Angeles, he'd pulled a vanishing act David Copperfield would have been proud of. I scoured the city for him, but it turns out that LA is a pretty big place, and vanished people tend to stay vanished if that's what they want to do. Maybe Sasquatch should get a place here. You'd never find him.
Hey, Brett, it's Calum calling, fellow making the Bigfoot documentary. Hey, Brett, it's Calum again. Brett, it's 2 o'clock, and I'm just wondering if I can get a hold of you this afternoon. Hey, Brett, it's Calum calling, just trying you again. I don't even need to look in my book for your number anymore. I know it off by heart. Okay, so give me a call. All right. Bye-bye.
I did manage to speak to Hudson while I was in LA, but he'd gone to Florida. Maybe he'd had his fill of Bigfoot and didn't want to talk about it anymore. But that was fine because the real story was still in Norway House, just as it always had been. And there, York Boat Days was in full swing. This event is held every year to celebrate the community's history. But cynics, like William Barodi of the Manitoba Sasquatch Research Center, might tell you that this year is more about making Norway House into the Bigfoot capital of the world than anything else.
Well, I think people tried to talk themselves into believing it for the basis that they wanted to promote their York Boat Days in Norway House. The York Boat Days had a tendency to be serving Sasquatch burgers and selling Sasquatch t-shirts.
Our people were beginning to look at things, how to market.
If somebody's smart that they're gonna take advantage of the situation, they can make a lot of money for themselves. Not just the person who filmed an actual Sasquatch sighting, but somebody who's good at marketing certain things or finding ways to make money, such as selling t-shirts.
Well, we're licensing our logo.
Oh, really?
Merchandise, so we have the real logo.
The band council did have the logo, sure, but Missy Flett and the rest of the town council weren't about to be left out of the action. I guess that's what happens when you have two sorts of government in one small area.
After the sighting, we decided to use the Sasquatch to promote our community. So what we've done is we've got some t-shirts made up with our logo, the Norway House Community Council logo, on the front, and then on the back we got the home of the Sasquatch with a picture of the Sasquatch walking through the bushes.
That's not the real product. We got the real product, so we're licensing our copyrights and everything else.
There's enough room for Sasquatch, I think, for everyone to tap in.
They can make their t-shirts, but we have the original patent. Whatever is going to happen, we're moving forward. We're not stopping. We have something here that we can use.
I had to admire the entrepreneurial spirit that had infused Norway House. There was just one big obstacle facing the community. You see, as soon as Bobby's video was made public, accusations of hoaxery began. And this is the risk taken by any Sasquatch witness. Doubters were everywhere, but sometimes the people you'd think would be supporters were even less helpful.
There's no doubt in my mind that these things are out there, but in this particular case, was there really something there?
You have to expect that there will be plenty of people who are going to suggest that you faked it. Naturally, I mean, even if you didn't.
And there's where we run into a dilemma with, especially today with videotapes and also photos, that the possibility of fabrication certainly exists with each and every one of them. So if we saw something that was definitely a Bigfoot creature, such as in the Patterson film from 1967, we're immediately skeptical that looks too good. Contrary-wise, if the image is a bit blurry, then skeptics say, well, that could be a man, or it could be anything, a bear.
Yes, the bear theory was popular, but no one was able to confirm that any more than they could confirm anything else. It was just one of many theories.
And they start with bears all the time. Well, most people know what a bear is. It's got claws and, it doesn't have a bunch of toes. It's got...
It's blurry enough that I can't really tell if it's really a quote-unquote humanoid or if it is something else. I did notice in some of the shots where it appears to be striding, there is not a lot of arm motion, which is what you would expect for something that is not a habitual biped. Whereas, with a human, our limbs move in a pattern. We take one step, the arm moves on the other side. That didn't appear to do it. So it might be a case where Bigfoot had neck strain that day, I don't know.
After reviewing the video and seeing what it is, I basically concluded that it's just a tree that's fallen over. The side of the river that he's on, there's some grass right in front of the camera, which is out of focus. Well, these blades are constantly moving in the front of the camera, but that figure directly in behind it does not move at any time. I wouldn't give you $10 for it. It's just nothing there.
For me, the most persuasive denunciation of the footage came from Matthew Moneymaker, the Bigfoot Field Research Organization founder who, ironically, had been hired by Brett Hudson to validate the footage in the Current Affair report.
They readied up a room, like kind of an editing room to show the footage, and they wanted to make sure they had cameras from different angles because, of course, they wanted a reaction like a big wow, etc. So I'm watching through it, and of course you see this little thing, and it's very blurry, it's very shaky. And I'm watching it, okay, and he tries to zoom in, and it goes out of focus. And I'm waiting for that good part of it, and then it's over. And I remember turning and looking at the camera and saying, is that it? Is that the Manitoba footage everybody's been talking about? I mean, that's, and I was just, and I remember they were all just sort of aghast that that's what my reaction would be.
And still more doubters. In Winnipeg, a pair of educators had heard about Bobby Clarke's video and immediately developed their own suspicions about it. Leanne Kaler and Randy Guest have been teaching in northern communities for years, and the whole Norway House story had a strange ring of familiarity to them.
This was several years back, but we had a student who was well over 6 feet tall, and as I recall, he didn't fit into the costume. Literally, we'd see him after school walking around Moose Lake practicing his Sasquatch walk.
But we have taught them how to mimic that footage specifically. Numerous times, actually.
Long shots,
often
angles,
distance,
all that stuff.
Motion,
movement.
Having them walk in their body to a certain arc, and et cetera, et cetera.
But how do we smoke out this mystery giant with the expert Sasquatch walk so we can ask him ourselves? Randy Guest had an idea for us.
You can have an audition, see who comes out, see what happens.
So that's exactly what we did.
Have you ever wanted to be the Sasquatch? Now is your opportunity. Filmmakers are in town holding auditions to play Bigfoot in a video recreation of last year's sighting at Sioux Falls. Best Sasquatch will get the part to be filmed on Sunday. Auditions to be held on Friday, April 14th at 11 a.m. at the Veterans Hall here at the Multiplex. Come on out for fun and frolic, and maybe the chance to play the legendary Sasquatch.
Well, after I heard about the Sasquatch video last year, I didn't believe it, truth be told.
done anything like this before, played Sasquatch?
Oh no, nothing like this.
Not bad at all. Even if we didn't lure some obvious culprit to our auditions, we figured that we could take the best Bigfoot we got and stage a sort of tribute recreation on the 1-year anniversary of Bobby's sighting. That was now only a couple of days away. We didn't find anyone who admitted to any previous experience, but the guy we recruited for our recreation was pretty darn good. Very good.
Alright, and now we would like to announce the chosen candidate of the Sasquatch audition. It is Robert Quesky Capo. And thank you to all the participants. You were all excellent Sasquatches. Everyone is welcome to watch the Sasquatch shoot on Sunday morning at around 11:45 at the ferry crossing.
Yes, the ferry crossing. Exactly 1 year from the day that Bobby Clarke made his now world-famous Bigfoot video recording, I was going to bring the story full circle by recreating the event. I have to admit that, deep down, I hoped and almost expected that the real Bigfoot would make an appearance. This time, for my camera. And I was planning on keeping it in focus. On the morning of April 16th, 2006, exactly 1 year after the Bigfoot sighting, the excitement in Norway House was in the very air itself. For the town, it was an opportunity to celebrate their moment of fame. For Bobby Clarke, it was a chance to find closure.
Me and a couple of my friends that were planning on doing stuff. We were thinking of going to go sit around at the site with lawn chairs and just sit around for the day and maybe have a radio kick back and relax just out there, just to keep it alive, I guess you can say.
But it had been a tough year for Bobby, and in the end, he couldn't face it. A lot of people had showed up to see our contest winner's performance, but there was no sign of the famed videographer. Bobby Clarke told me that, since that fateful day, he'd suffered from nightmares and poor health. He'd become unable to continue work as a ferry operator, and by the day of the anniversary, he'd become depressed and morose.
On the 1-year anniversary, I was scared, kind of mad, mixed feelings. I don't know why. I'm just uneasy about it still.
So what about Bigfoot? Would the legendary beast make an appearance that day after all? As a final celebratory goodbye to this adventure, I decided to hike into the woods near the ferry crossing to the exact spot where 1 year earlier the creature had purportedly stood. Bobby's friend Byron Aptagan was kind enough to take me there.
We're heading into the area where the footprints we located a year ago. And hopefully maybe we'll see some more.
After a long trek deep into the woods and far beyond the road, we found the spot. This was the place where the creature had stood and stared at Bobby exactly 1 year earlier. At last I understood Bobby's fear. The beast was as intangible as a ghost, but could kill you like a bear. It was hard to make sense of that kind of fear because it was so irrational, so difficult to imagine if you weren't there. At the same time, being so close to where one had supposedly stood was a weirdly fulfilling thrill for me. And then, Byron saw something.
What we have on the ground here seems to be like some sort of an imprint, maybe about 16 inches long.
The funny thing about Bigfoot prints is that, as with the image in Bobby's video, the closer you looked, the less sure you were that there was anything to see. But then again, I guess that's exactly what attracted me to the Bigfoot legend in the first place. And maybe it's the reason why, for Bobby, the encounter had been so difficult to shake off. It's clear that, for Bobby Clarke and for most of the people in Norway House, the saga of the great Bigfoot videotaping hadn't played out nearly as they might have expected or hoped. It kind of went the opposite way. In the end, the story of the Norway House Sasquatch sighting would fade from the public's memory, just as the creature's footprints had been washed away by Manitoba weather. And worst of all, the actual videotape of the sighting, which Bobby had entrusted to the community, seemed to have disappeared. Bobby wouldn't speculate on where it went or who he thought might have it, but he was willing to tell me how he felt about it all.
Feeling angry, lost, confused, mistreated, I guess you can say. You know, I've trusted them to hold the tape and stuff like that. And now it's, don't know where it is now.
I remember telling him, you know, advising him to make an attempt to speak to an elder about it and start dealing with it, because in the long run, it may affect him in other ways that he wouldn't be able to deal with it. You know, especially with the profound numbers of people that wanted to talk to him about it and share his stories 100, 200, 300 times over and over again.
That's what really bugs me, is the people that ask me, what's wrong? Where's your video? Can I see it? And then, sure, I'd like to show it. I don't have it. That is the thing. I'd like to show it. You know, things happen for a reason, and it happened this way for a reason, and you know, maybe it's a good way, maybe it isn't. But it's just, I gotta get over my fear of it now.
I change the oils and oil the squeaks, patch the holes and fluid leaks at dusk beneath a diabetic moon. And wait to take the TV cruise across the creaking ice. The news is howling to the timber wolves, and soon I'll go.
It's never been determined what exactly it was that Bobby Clarke photographed on the morning of April 16th, 2005, and I guess it probably never will be. The year after Bobby's encounter, there was another sighting several hundred kilometers to the west. A few months after that, another one, still further west. It's moving away from Bobby and from Norway House, like a fading memory. Maybe it's spooked by all the attention, or all the documentary film crews. Maybe it's migrating or looking for something we can't even guess at. Maybe it never existed at all. But however far the Sasquatch flees, Bobby will never forget his experience with the beast. And the people of Norway House will always have their Sasquatch burgers, their t-shirts, their reputation as a Bigfoot hotbed. And so it's fair to say that Bigfoot never has left. He'll always be a part of the community, woven into the tapestry of legend that makes a place like Norway House what it is. You go to the town today, and you look past the buildings, the roads, the lights, and you peer deep into the woods, and you think to yourself, hey, maybe there is something out there.
Yeah, welcome to the recipe, where you can mix it like a recipe. Brown Styles on the track, gonna tell you where we at one time, bet you won't forget that. Norway House in the house, we got it, you want it. Norway House in the house, we gotta prove it, we'll do it. Norway House in the house, the competition gets creamed. Norway House in the house, cause we're the dream team.
We do it like this, yo listen up, this can of whooped ass has opened up, got you all shooken up. Wanna come down, we don't mess around. Norway House in the crowd, watching this go down. Here I go again, out of my head. Ever since I convinced the press I was dead. Now follow the scream of the visitor team. They can dream, cause we're mean with the colors black and green. Coming at ya, so what you gonna do? Try to school me, please, your game is pee-wee. You should go back to where you came from. Wanna talk trash, read a chance you remember.
Norway House in the house, we got it.